Hi, my name is Alexa Nairn, and this is my project on evaluating the effectiveness of a visual support to increase appropriate peer interactions in school-aged children diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. The rationale behind this study was that children diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder often exhibit significant deficits in communication, social interactions, and play and leisure skills that directly impact their ability to create and foster interpersonal relationships. The participant of this study was Tommy Lee. Tommy Lee is a 4-year, 5-month-old male who is diagnosed with level 2 autism. Tommy Lee exhibits significant deficits in social communication and social interactions that impact his ability to independently navigate and foster interpersonal relationships. Tommy Lee is often seen to place his hands on his peers out of context. Placing hands on peers out of context has been defined as any instance where his hands are placed on his peers when the social situation does not call for physical interactions, such as painting, playing with blocks, reading books, jumping on the trampoline, etc. Appropriate times to engage in physical contact with peers, such as during a game of tag or duck, duck, goose, was not counted during this study, as those are in context. A functional analysis of Tommy Lee's behavior was conducted, and it was determined that the function of this behavior was attention. Due to the high frequency of placing his hands on his peers out of context, Tommy Lee was beginning to become aversive to his peers. This intervention was selected to increase appropriate peer interactions, to reduce aversions to others, and to increase opportunities to receive attention from peers through appropriate peer interactions. Prior research shown that there is a correlation between visual supports such as video supports to increase appropriate peer interactions. Other research has shown that engaging in preferred activities has also increased appropriate peer interactions. The design of this study was an A-B reversal design to truly understand the functional relation between the intervention and the targeted desired behavior. The independent variable was the visual support of a red-green stimulus, and the dependent variable was the frequency of appropriate peer interactions, measured by a reduction of touching peers out of context. So the method of collecting this data was by a trained staff member, and the trained staff member would bring Tommy Lee into the gym on his working breaks. Tommy Lee utilizes a token economy to gain access to the gym of the ABA clinic while completing tasks in the classroom setting and in the individual treatment setting of the clinic. During baseline data collection, no prompts were provided to keep his hands to himself, and frequency data was collected on how many times he placed his hands on his peers out of context. During the intervention, Tommy Lee was presented with a red-green visual. Each time Tommy Lee placed his hands on his peers out of context, he was presented with the red side of the visual. A modification made during this study was to provide a visual statement for the first 10 working breaks the intervention was implemented, as Tommy Lee frequently yelled red in response to being shown a red side of a red-green visual during inappropriate peer interactions. The additional verbal statement of "that's not a choice" or "we can keep our hands to ourselves" was faded after the first 10 working breaks. Each time Tommy Lee engaged in an appropriate play, which was play not touching his peers out of context, he was presented with the green side of a red-green visual, and specific verbal praise was provided for those first 10 working breaks. This was also faded over time, as the connection was established between the expected behavior and the visual support. The results of this study show that appropriate peer interactions increased when the intervention was implemented and decreased when the intervention was withdrawn. It is noted that the highest occurrence of touching peers out of context occurred during an Easter egg hunt with the entire clinic, as Tommy Lee is used to approximately 4 to 6 peers in the gym at a time instead of all 12 peers. When the intervention was re-implemented, appropriate peer interactions increased once again. This shows that there's a functional relationship between the intervention of a visual support and an increase of appropriate peer interactions. Let's go back. So what did I learn from this project? I learned that a visual support can encourage appropriate peer interactions. The results from my project can inform future treatment interventions to target appropriate social interactions and appropriate social communication for individuals diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. One limitation of this study was that it occurred during flu season, and the participant got the flu and then gave the flu to the trained staff member, so the intervention was not implemented for approximately a week, as both the staff member and the participant were not in the clinic. Another limitation of this study was that it was a single participant study. In future studies, it can be expanded to multiple participants to better understand the effects of a visual support to increase peer interactions across various individuals diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. Another limitation of this study was that the study occurred in only one setting of the clinic. In future studies, to better understand how the intervention generalizes, it can be implemented across various different settings. One refinement I would make to this study in the future would be keeping a frequency track of appropriate peer interactions to see if the visual support encourages more appropriate peer interactions versus redirects inappropriate peer interactions. Another refinement that could be done would be seeing if the rate decreases as duration data in the gymnasium area of the clinic was conducted throughout. Overall, the results of this study showed that a visual support can increase appropriate peer interactions. In future studies, I would love to see a maintenance phase conducted to see if the intervention can still be faded over time and increase peer interactions as well.